Signs of explosions have been heard in parts of Iran, according to state media. But U.S. officials are telling Al Jazeera that the military has not attacked Iran in the last few hours. Iranian state media says the blasts were heard in multiple locations, including Konarok, Bushehr and Shobadak, but they've denied reports of explosions in Bandar Abbas. An official in Bushehr says the blast in the city was caused by air defense response. Kimberly Halkett is joining us now from the White House. So U.S. officials denying any strikes in recent hours. What have they been saying?
That's right. Al Jazeera reached out to a U.S. defense official, and that official confirming to Al Jazeera that the U.S. is not, at this hour, in the last few hours, conducting any military strikes. Now, this, as there have been reports of explosions in Iran, and as we have been reporting here in Al Jazeera, on Wednesday evening as well as Tuesday evening, the U.S. military did conduct strikes on the various sites within Iran. Now, what we know is that on Tuesday, the U.S. military broadened its campaign in both scale as well as intensity. We know that there was an effort to degrade Iran's ability to target ships in the Strait of Hormuz. So as a result, the U.S. military targeting anti-ship missiles, coastal radar, as well as Iran's air defense systems. But again, at this hour, a U.S. defense official telling Al Jazeera that the U.S. military has not been conducting strikes in Iran in the last few hours, even as there have been reports of explosions. Now, we should point out the U.S. military did not give an explanation for who may be behind these explosions, only saying that the U.S. is not involved.
Now, I understand Donald Trump's been saying the U.S. would respond 20 times harder to any attack from Tehran. At the same time, there is a sense that he appears to be leaving the door open for some sort of negotiations. Do you get a sense of what's likely to happen over the coming days? Could the U.S. go back to striking again, or could we be seeing diplomacy?
What we know is that the U.S. has always maintained that there is the possibility of taking action against Iran should it need to be defensive in nature. What we know, though, is that the U.S. military has been maintaining that while there is this sort of posture at the ready, there is also my apologies. A really loud thunderstorm and lightning storm going on behind us right now. You probably saw that. What we do know is that there is, in fact, opening for diplomacy that has been left in place by the White House. Donald Trump showing his exasperation as he spoke on Air Force One on Wednesday evening. But at the same time, what I can tell you is that while the U.S. president may be exasperated, he has left open the possibility for there to be further negotiations or talks being conducted by his Middle East envoys, Jared Kushner, as well as Steve Witkoff.
OK, Kimberly, we're going to let you get in out of the rain there. But for now, thanks very much indeed. Kimberly Halkett at the White House. Well, Al Jazeera's Mahmoud Abdul Khair has more from Tehran.
Explosions also were reportedly heard in the Konarok port city, which is home to strategic naval and military assets. This comes after the latest spate of attacks, the U.S. airstrikes that targeted several locations in 5 Iranian provinces and caused dozens of deaths and injuries, including civilians and military individuals, according to the health ministry. The attacks also earlier targeted the Bushehr nuclear power plant. Now, the government here portrays this as another dangerous escalation by Washington, and the foreign ministry considers it a violation of international law and of Iran's sovereignty. Now, the timing is particularly significant because this comes on the day the burial ceremony of the late slain leader, Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has been taking place in the city of Mashhad. So the political establishment here wants to frame this, the airstrikes by U.S. forces and the burial of the late Supreme Leader who was killed by an American airstrike back in February. So it wants to highlight the narrative that the political establishment will continue with response and will continue with resistance. Mahmoud Abdul Wahid, Al Jazeera, Tehran.
Mohammed Islami is a research fellow in Middle East and North Africa studies at Tehran University, and he's joining us from Tehran. Thank you very much indeed for being with us. Can you help us with some clarification here? So there was a suggestion, or there have been media reports that these attacks have been taking place, or explosions have been heard over parts of Iran, to be specific, and yet the US is saying it's got nothing to do with them. They haven't carried out any strikes over the last few hours. What's Iran's take on this? Who do they think is responsible for what is going on?
First of all, thank you so much for having me. It's a very complicated situation right now in the Persian Gulf. It's a kind of chaotic situation in the Persian Gulf. And while the Americans are claiming they are not responsible for the attacks, it doesn't mean that these attacks are not in collaboration with the American and Donald Trump administration. Right now, the way that these attacks are happening right now in Iran is the same as other attacks by the Israelis in recent years. They don't want to take the responsibilities of the terrorist attacks on the Iranians on Iranian land. And from the Iranian point, it seems that the Americans want to convey a kind of message to the Iranians that in the absence of diplomatic negotiations, they are going to show. They're going to let the Israelis to have these kind of operations in Iran.
What extent do you think it benefits the Israelis and the US to be sharing responsibilities, given the fact that predominantly the attacks against Iran up until just a matter of hours ago were being carried out primarily by the United States? Admittedly, Israel's Defense Minister, Israel Katz, is reported to have said that Israel was prepared to resume its military campaign against Iran if needed. How seriously do you think would Tehran take that particular phrase?
First of all, I should say that these attacks are not a kind of surprising attacks from the Iranians. So the Iranians were waiting for these kind of operations from the Americans and Israelis. But I should say that the Israelis are on the verge of having kind of election. Bibi Netanyahu is, he's very concerned regarding his court. So they don't want the Iranians to start kind of retaliation operations against Israel after these kind of attacks. So the way that they are doing this kind of operation all around the region, I think that they want to buy time and not to take the responsibility of their attacks and their operations in Iran. But we should wait for the Iranian officials to take their position regarding these incidents.
In Tehran's opinion, given what's happened over the last 24, 48 hours or so, what are the chances now of returning to talks?
You know, right now the Americans are sending some kind of messages through the mediators. While Donald Trump himself said that the memorandum of understanding between Iran and the United States is done, but the American administration and the negotiators trying to, to persuade the Iranians to come back to the negotiation. But I think that it is very hard in the situation right now in the region, because the Americans, what happens in the Strait of Hormuz was not a kind of accident. The Americans tried to challenge the Iranian framework for managing the Strait of Hormuz, and these incidents and these attacks is a kind of another step after challenging the Iranian management on the Strait of Hormuz.
Mohammed Islami is Research Fellow in Middle East and North Africa Studies at Tehran University. He's been with us from Tehran. Thank you very much indeed. Well, following the tit-for-tat strikes between Iran